Our panel discussion today will be on how smart cities can enhance the quality of life. I'm Dr. Mona Badr. I'm honored to be your moderator for this session. Actually, smart cities are rapidly transforming the way we live, work, and interact with our urban environments. They hold the promise of enhancing the quality of life for their residents in numerous ways, from improved sustainability to increased convenience and connectivity. To explore this important topic, we have assembled a panel of distinguished experts who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. Let me introduce them. First, I will start with Professor Ibrahim El-Demiri, our conference chairman, Dean of Faculty of Postgrad in the GUC, and the former Minister of Transportation, who has played a pivotal role in shaping urban mobility policies. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ibrahim. Also, we have Dr. Hoda El-Shawatfi, serves as Assistant of the Minister of Environment for Ecotourism Affairs since 2020. She began working in the environmental field since 2008. In 2014, she was appointed as head of the Global Environment Facility Unit at the Ministry of Environment. El-Shawatfi has extensive experience in environmental program and project management. This includes climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development projects. Please welcome me in joining Dr. Hoda. Dr. Nadine Alama, our amazing keynote speaker, Executive Director of the Taylor Geospatial Institute, member of the United Nations Committee on Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management. She's appointed member of the U.S. National Geospatial Advisory Committee. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nadine. Engineer Jan Blasko. He's an architecture graduate from Technical University of Darmstadt. He has additional qualification in real estate management at the ADI School in Stuttgart, partner at Jürgen and partner Hamburg, Germany. We have also Professor Dr. Talal El-Shabrawi. Dr. Talal is our Vice Dean for Academic Affairs for the Faculty of Information and Engineering Technology, and he is Professor in Computer and Communication Technology. His expertise in the digital infrastructure of smart cities is invaluable. Before we start, I need to highlight that we will start the discussion between the panel members, and after that, we will open the discussion for audience. So please take notes for whatever question you see that it's needed.
Good afternoon. My name is Ibrahim El-Demiri. I am Professor of Transportation Planning and Traffic Engineering. Nowadays, I want to speak with you about the smart cities and the old cities where all of us live. I want to differentiate, first of all, between the new cities and the old cities. We as planners, if we want to build a new city, we have to follow the theory of the 5 E's. What is these 5 E's? First of the E is engineering. That a group of engineering from town planner or urban planner, from transport planner, from environmental engineers. That is the engineering. And the second E is the environmental aspect. And the third E is economical aspect. And the fourth E is educational. We have to educate the Leute and the people about the plans which we shall put. And the final 5 is the enforcement. In this case, I told always my students, in any project they have to take it over to take care about these 5 E's: engineering, environmental, economy, and educational and enforcement. And this must be taken over if we want to plan a new city. But if we look for the old cities with all problems we have different challenges in the old cities which we shall face of it as a challenge according to the pollution from traffic, heavy population density in some areas, the wrong land use in these urban areas, and it is a problem for the planner to take over about these problems and these challenges, because before we take a decision, we have to collect several data so that the planner can have in hand a good data to build some ideas and some proposals to solve such problems. The second problem we face always in such challenges, the financial budget available, how we can improve and enhance the old city and to solve its problems. With all problems we see in our environment today in the old cities, from pollution, traffic congestion, and accident, and noise pollution, and the industry zones which is within the urban areas. I hope that with this summary which I gave, can we discuss it if you want more in details, so that I want to give our colleagues here in the stage to give us what they have to give us from their experience, etc. Thank you very much.
Okay, shall we start with Dr. Hoda? I was asking actually what are the challenges and opportunities in balancing urban development with the preservation of natural resources and ecosystems within smart cities?
Okay, thank you.
Start the discussion with.
Okay, let me first tell you a little bit about myself. Since I've worked with the at the Ministry of Environment with the environmental portfolio, I started working with the GEF, the Global Environmental Facilities, which it's an entity that funds environmental projects. At that sense, we started, to have ideas what to plan or how can we a little bit transform this country into a better place. And especially when it comes to cities, we did have several options or like concept notes that has been presented to transform some cities here in Egypt to green cities. But when we started discussing this issue with the relevant stakeholders, line ministries and governorates and stuff like that, we found lots of resistance because they didn't a little bit understand what's the relevance between the environment portfolio and what they are doing on ground. So when planning, as Dr. was just saying, that when we plan, we have to put everyone around the table to put all the aspects there clear, and how can we address this toward I don't know how to say it, but to decision takers to put it in mind. When it comes to the ecosystem, yes, we can build smart cities everywhere, or we can go for this, but we have to put in mind the ecosystem that we have, how it's fragile, and we do not build in anywhere or to put the city as we plan. We should select the proper place to do this model. And for the existing cities, yes, how can we accommodate it and to transform it to sustainable city? A little bit, it has to be put in mind. Now, right now, we do have two models that it's going as a prototype project. As a Ministry of Environment, we took is transforming green Sharm el-Sheikh into a green city, and we succeed moving this around due to the COP, the climate change COP that came here in Egypt. It was a great push, maybe from everyone around, to finally understand what does it mean to go for a sustainable city or to a green city. Yeah, they had to transform the whole city. Yes, the Ministry of Electricity is there. Finally, they accommodate us with the energy efficiency, you know, for the hotels, and the buses had transformed. We succeed to have this, the electric buses, gas buses, to be there in Sharm el-Sheikh, not only in this, but we are working on this on national basis to transform all our transport system right now and to have some stations there all around Egypt, not only in Sharm el-Sheikh, but we are working on this also in Hurghada. Right now, we are going to start in a couple of weeks transforming Hurghada because it's a different model than Sharm el-Sheikh. Sharm el-Sheikh is a touristic city, but Hurghada is different a little bit. It's touristic and it's a normal city. So transform it, yes, but it do have a more impact on ground when it comes to ecosystem or the biodiversity that we have or the surroundings. For example, we are right now studying also transforming the boats into electric boats, but to do so, yes, it's not that visible right now because the batteries and stuff like that. So we have a little bit to do some research, some studies to know a little bit how we can move forward into greener or sustainable cities as a prototype and then transform it and to have this model toward all over Egypt a little bit to be much better and healthier.
How geospatial data can help us in facing these challenges of transforming cities?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I want to say how humbled I am to be with you here. This is such a fascinating and very smart people. So thank you for including me and thank you for facilitating this conversation. I love the 5 E's, and I wonder if I can add one more E, which is equity, especially as we roll all these technologies. So a proposal. It's great to meet somebody who was involved in Sharm el-Sheikh, sort of like transformation, which we've heard about. So it's, you know, your work was noticed, and thank you again. And your presentation this morning about the multimodal, I mean, this panel is about the quality of life and how it all comes back. And I know it's a stupid example maybe, but to me, your presentation triggered this example we've been hearing about. So this was, you know, airport and trains and buses and all of that. And at one point, somebody said, I want to start a business, and it's a very simple app on your phone, which is setting the alarm for when to wake up based on your flight, right? So that's it. So instead of saying, I want to wake up at this time, and then I'm going to order an Uber, and then it's going to take me this much to go through the security line, because you got all that data, you know, this person can say, you know, my flight is flight, you know, 321 tomorrow morning, and it tells you going back through historical records. So it's like, to me, it's really, really cool. And I think this is what we're talking about. You talk about improving quality of life. I know this is not like, you know, critical, but imagine for the frequent travelers how just like you start to streamline these things, and you add on top of it that you don't even have to drive yourself or take a cab. It's like a unmanned, you know, a robo-taxi that takes you, so you don't have to park at the airport, and then you save all that parking space and use it for something else. It's like, to me, these are the ideas when we put all these pieces together and we talk about smart cities.
A lot of potentials.
It's a lot of potential, and your question, Mona, is like, it's all the data in the back end, and to us, it's geospatial data, as in it's the data about where things are and how they move and when they move and the patterns behind it. So it's not just the data, it's the analysis, the AI, the machine learning that we're putting on top of it. and then the amazing visualization so that we can communicate. So to me, going back to an earlier presentation, it comes back to, it's all that data, it's that geospatial data, but we have to share. We are indeed, I mean, he showed earlier the silos. The Department of Transportation doesn't share with underground infrastructure, doesn't share with Department of Education. And we were chatting earlier, even at the simplest levels, we don't share addresses, right? You know, we each have our own formats and our own things. So the backbone is the data. We can do better with data definitions and data sharing, but also the opportunities are just fantastic when everything starts to
To
work.
make our life easier.
Yes, exactly.
So, Professor Talal, should we direct the focus only on new cities to start, or by attempting to make current cities smarter?
So, first of all, thank you very much for having me with the distinguished guests. Maybe I'll also start that I'm from a telecom background, so one of the nice things about smart cities is that it really brings people together. So you get to learn about different perspectives with respect to different disciplines and how can all of them contribute to make life better. So I usually tell the students that if you think about telecom, then you say more data, more video, more voice. That's what a telecommunication engineer does. But nowadays, we think we could be integrated with the bigger community. So having said this, now the smart cities is a notion or is a key word, but I think we have to, it's good to do things from scratch because you have a new city, then the sky is the limit. You can think of whatever you would like to think of, all the use cases, all the applications. However, you have to, for the existing cities, maybe you would like to focus more about what are the real problems. What would make people buy in that I really need this project or I really need this smart city use case? Another aspect is that smart cities, from our perspective, is about sensors. So maybe at some point in time, you can reach the point where you have the sensors and they're there in the city, and then you think, what will you do with them? Rather than start, I want to do a faster transportation system, or I want to do, because maybe the same sensors will serve multiple use cases. So it is possible that you think of it from the perspective of enhancing an infrastructure with the capabilities, and then look how to serve these capabilities better. I think it works with both cities, but maybe in the case of the new cities, the infrastructure is easier to plan from the beginning because in the new in the existing cities, you already have some limitations that will bound your capabilities.
Yes, it can be used in the current cities to maybe detect problems before happening or at the edge of happening. You know, if you have sensors in the infrastructures and some pipes will destroy or explode or something, you can detect this before happening by reading the pressure, or if you have these sensors, so we can implement all this.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, from architecture point of view.
You mean, actually, I first of all also wanted to express my gratitude to be here in this panel. It's a nice occasion. So you mean whether it's better to plan from scratch or to revise existing cities?
Yes, because if you are going to plan from scratch, this is for future, for people who are going to start their lives or start moving. But for current people who are living in current cities, they need to make their life easy.
I think there's no black and white, so I guess
Yes,
it's.
you have the attempt.
So I guess it's always, if you are planning to design a new city, it's of course good to plan this in a sustainable way and to make use of all the knowledge we nowadays already have.
Yes.
But in the same time, being sustainable, or the most sustainable, is maybe to really enhance the existing cities and to try to make these cities also as good as maybe a city on a greenfield or from scratch, because most of the people, I think, nowadays are living already in existing cities.
Yes.
And to resettle them in other cities, I think, won't really make sense. So I think it would be better to really also enhance the cities we are living in. And I think that's maybe then some kind of test laboratory. You are maybe making some kind of point in a city you are designing from scratch, but the experience that you are making and the data that you are collecting, you are maybe then transferring also back to the city you are living in. And I think you can even try to modify the existing urban fabric to enhance it and also to make it a better environment to live in.
Yes, and I believe it depends also on the country, because some countries you cannot help. You know, you have this heritage architecture in Old Cairo. How can you put it in a way that to preserve the heritage and keep it,
of
or
course.
make it?
Of course, but I think that's always the genius loci, as we call it, in genius loci, like this special sense of the place you are building a building or you are acting in architecture. I think you always have to consider where you are placing or where you are working in architecture. So it doesn't make sense to transfer like German style into Cairo or vice versa or whatever. But of course, if you're like trying to preserve, I mean, I already got the point that if you want to preserve the heritage, I think this is very essential, because this is a kind of as a kind of character, or as even kind of national identity.
Yes,
and that's something really worth to be preserved. And therefore, I think the task is to somehow maybe keep the envelope, but somehow make the inside or the everything which is not really stick to the national identity to refurbish this. I think this is a really quite challenging task.
Yes, it's a challenge.
But I think that's worth going this way, because, as I was also before mentioning in my lecture, that we are now preserving an old building because we just found this is a heritage building which should be preserved, and we are trying to implement modern functions in this building. I think that's maybe the tasks in nowadays and also for the future, because this is going to balance then heritage and our past, where we are coming from, and going into the future.
I saw in Potsdam in Germany, they preserved the out structure. They used even the old bricks that was existent to build the same old city in Potsdam.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean, we have been, unfortunately I cannot really show slides from pictures or like from projects we have been doing, but for example in Hamburg at the town hall, next to the town hall there was an old building, it's called Alter Wall, and there was some offices inside, but the whole structure of the building wasn't really durable, and also not really like it wasn't possible to take this into the future. So what we actually in the end decided was to keep the facade, but to demolish everything inside
yes.
and then just rebuild the building, but still keeping the old facade. And that's, I think, also something which in future will maybe happen more often.
Yes, we have also this project in Cairo University that using laser scan in having scan for all the heritage structures to get it documented, and then the other phase will be for maintenance and doing the maintenance in the right way to keep the old authentic shape. So, Professor Demiri, what are the challenges to Egypt in achieving sustainable transportation? Do we have, our means of transportation need to be developed in the current city? In Egypt, in Cairo, in our Cairo and other governorates, we have now the means of transportation. We need to make it more friendly.
Yeah, as you know, the transport planner put his plan for maximum 20 years. This means that every 20 years, we have to upgrade the old master plan and to put forecasts for the next 20 years due to the different changes in the urban area, the population density, the different land uses coming within the last 20 years, and then collect the needed data to put ideas exactly build on these data, not to put solutions without data, because no one can put solutions without exact data and the forecasting of such data in the future.
Yes.
And in our transportation planning system, we have different mathematical models to forecast and know exactly how many traffic volumes, as example, shall be on the road network of this city, where shall be the points of congestion, etc., etc. And at the end, he shall put the better solution according to the situation and the financial budget available from the city.
Okay, so we all come to the data again. So the geospatial data will be much help in this, will be the base of this improvement, I see. So we used to put the transportation plan for 20 years, but within the context of what's happening now and the speed change that's happening every day, are the plan will be for also 20 years or shorter period?
No. Yani, as I said, every 20 years we have a growing number in the population, different land uses, malls, etc.,
Yes.
industrial zones,
Exactly.
new in the urban area. All these, as you know, any land use attract trips and generate trips at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those trips is overload for the last master plan has been built on for this such city. For this reason, we have to look about the changes happened within these 20 years and put the right solutions for it.
Yes, and I believe the data will show us the rate of change, so our plan will last for 20 years or only for 5 years. And yes, please, Dr. Nadine.
No, I like this, if I can build on what you said, because I go back to having all the data and all the tools help us, run better modeling and simulation. And so part of what, for example, the stuff that I've seen in terms of planning for the next 20 years is actually starting to use all what we're doing here to communicate with the politicians and the policymakers. So again, in the case of natural disasters and flooding, so you give the politician, say the governor or the mayor, here's the headset, and here's what's going to happen to your area if you get 3 times the number of hurricanes or 5 times the number. And then they start to see what's happening. And when you talk about financial, they actually see, so if the bridge collapses, because we have the data, back to you, Mona, you see the dollar signs. This is how much this cost, and if I'm going to rebuild it using today's technology, because we also have sort of that data, it tells you this is how much it's going to cost you to rebuild. So actually putting these together in terms of future planning and running all the what-ifs with actual data and the various scenarios, we're starting to be able to do it, and we need to communicate that to the politicians who are making the decisions about budget and projects.
Yes, based on this true data. And what about the data privacy and security, and how can we assure that data will not be seeped into other hands?
I can answer this very quickly because it is one of the things I heard one time when we had a Smart Cities event, and somebody said the S in Smart City is not smart, it's surveillance. So you have to be careful. And then the best thing that I've heard about it is when we talk about data sharing, it doesn't mean we're going to share data with everybody and everywhere. And it's more purpose-driven data sharing. So when you share data, you specify who you're going to share it with, for what purpose, for what duration of time. Because during emergencies, this is not the time. We need to save some lives. For telecom purposes, you hide some data, you fuzzy up some other data. So this concept of purpose-driven data sharing not just based on agreements that we sign together, but also based on licensing that's inside the data. So the software takes care based on authentication of the users.
This need to be known because many people don't want to put their travel on GPS because they are afraid of being tracked or something.
And they are.
And they are tracked. So you will never get real data. Dr. Talal, do you have something to add, please?
Actually, the example was mentioned at the beginning about everybody knows when I'll go to sleep because I have a flight tomorrow. So that's already an issue of concern. So I know everybody here in Egypt, we have this salesperson that calls you, selling you some products. So now they have more information about you
Yes.
that could help them target you better. So I think the idea of having data that is time limited, so this goes back to the infrastructure or the protocol or the system that you adopt. So maybe it is a good exercise is that some of the time, some of the data that you carry, if it's not needed to be historically retrieved, then maybe it is data that will, by nature, will be erased. And this would give people, maybe they don't erase it after all, but at least the announced policy is that this data is a time-limited data. And I think this would help a lot in the privacy issues.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the security and the cybersecurity is one of the most important tracks in our field, and a lot of research is done in this direction because anonymous data is valuable, which means that the more data you have, the better decisions you can make. So still, we have to distinguish which is the data that we want to keep and how we're going to keep it, and which is the data that really maybe we don't really need it, and we give the confidence to the inhabitants or to the people in the smart cities that they engage in these activities.
Okay, so how can private sector and universities, in collaboration with the government, contribute to the development of smart cities in the light of data?
So generally, there are a lot of activities that are shared. So we have partnership with the industry, we have partnership with the governmental projects, but maybe also it would be nice to have some sort of a consortium that puts some sort of a vision of what will the smart cities components will be, because I know a lot of people working in smart cities and maybe we duplicate our work, or maybe I'm doing something and when I want to integrate with them, it's difficult. But if there's some consortium of a group of people interested in this community or in this city, try to unify or standardize the system that we are working with, maybe this will help a lot of people to join in and not to duplicate efforts, as I said. So maybe this would be a nice thing to do.
So a lot of the Smart Cities Conference will help.
Number 3.
Smart Cities Conference will help let people know what we are doing. So it's important, actually, yes. Do you want to add something about carbon emission? Because in the smart cities, we are doing our best to build on.
No, maybe I can add
Yes.
or can take one of the 5 A's that Professor Demiri just said in the start. It's the education. You know, if we educate people right and they do understand what does it mean, not only smart cities, but what mean our resources, our sustainability measures that we are taking, maybe that will facilitate a little bit all our works. Already we integrated as a Ministry of Environment our environmental portfolio into the curriculums when it comes to the schools and universities right now. Yes, we started 2 years ago, but you know, it will take some time, you know, to change the mindset or the mentality of this community a little bit. It will take time. We need, of course, not only the Ministry of Environment to work, but all line ministers, all the governors, and to help us to a little bit to transform this city into a sustainable one. Yeah.
So for the architecture point of view, how can you get benefit from this all geospatial data in your architecture design?
As I mentioned before in my lecture, I mean, there was one question already about the data analysis and how we are implementing this in our design. I think it's really about understanding better the behavior of customers or of citizens, because this is, of course, then something which is somehow transferred to the real world.
Yes, at the presentation of Dr. Nadine and also Dr. Dut, they were having this simulation of the winds. For example, it's one of the examples, of course, about the winds within the city. So you can simulate how the wind speed. So I think this will help much for the architecture planning for a new city if you have a real data about how it moves.
Of course, I mean, because
It's
this,
one of them.
before
Sound,
this was done,
waves, sound and winds and.
right, because this was done before in a wind channel, so you had a huge gypsum model from an area of a city. Right now you can just take the real 3D
Yes.
model and you can simulate whatever you want, and then of course the data you are receiving is much more tracing what actually you are looking for. The same for the sun shading. I mean, before you also had to build physical models. Now everything is done in 3D, in a digital model. And this, of course, is then like it's a kind of reflection, or like the data you are receiving, of course, is then interfering with the real design that you are doing. So you're, of course, taking into consideration where you have wind channels in the urban structure, in the urban fabric, to keep them still flowing to, for example, ease sometimes the climate inside in the city. You are especially arranging some of these wind corridors maybe to make a hot area even less hot. There's, for example, the discussion right now in Europe
This
ongoing.
will save energy if you can achieve
As-
this will save energy.
Of course. And there's
So
also
we are
another study ongoing right now, and a lot of talk about things that we actually have to bring back trees and plants to the city, because they are eventually cooling down the temperature in the cityscape. And that's something, I mean, when you're looking now at least, I mean, here it's the same, but it's in Europe all the time the same as well. Instead of trees, now we are planting cars. There are always cars somehow stored in the cityscape. And I think if we would reduce this again,
Yes, we used to have trees.
and then plant trees, I think the whole city climate would change a lot. And there's also the saying of this heat island effect. I mean, if you have buildings that are not having extensive green roof topping, the building itself is, of course, then sucking all the heat coming from the sun.
Yes.
And then if you like plant,
reduces the temperature definitely. Yes.
and
And it seeps water on the ceiling or not.
pardon?
How can you control water from ceilings and?
I think that's just a
So
construction.
you are giving the structure people hard life. So please.
Yeah, but I think that's something you can handle and you can control. But basically, if you plan it in the right way, it really has a benefit, because it's storing rainwater, which is not just going to the sewage system and it's actually then gone, but actually you are storing it and you're like giving back some humidity as well, which is cooling again the climate. So they are very complex systems which actually we can take from nature itself.
Yes.
And we just have to implement again in our city fabric, in our city structure, to make again the quality of life better.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Ibrahim, do you need to add anything do you need to add anything, or shall we start question from audience?
Yeah.
Okay, shall start questions from audience, please? Professor Dieter?
Short question to the experts. I'm coming to Egypt since more than 20 years regularly, once a month sometimes, to one visit per 2 months whatsoever. So, and we heard yesterday morning by Professor Demeri that this summer was very, very hot in Egypt. It was more hot than the years before, 35 degrees, 40 degrees, 45 degrees, 50 degrees. So we heard from architecture that we can put more green into the city, having the rooftop screen, having more trees, having plants on the facades of the buildings, and this cools down a city. But in Egypt, you have River Nile, and the volume of River Nile is limited. Well, what can we do in Egypt to cool down the climate in summer? Just to bring it down from 40 degrees maybe to 35 degrees. So using more plants or more green I have some doubts. Where does the water come? Everything is artificially irrigated. Every tree we see here on campus is artificially irrigated. So that means if we bring more trees into Egypt, maybe we can reduce all the golf courses here in Egypt, and instead of this, we can more green here. But what can we do especially for Egypt, just to bring the heat and some.
Thank you, Professor Dieter. Our problem here in Egypt exactly is that the fact we have in the last 20 years about 22 new cities give out in Egypt to try the high pollution and the high density of the old cities to distribute it around those 22 cities. But the challenge of this solution that all these cities has not connected with a good public transport system. Everybody use his own car, and this make high congestion on the highway and roadways and different axes every day. And at the same time, the distribution of those new cities are not well distributed so that can elaborate or distribute this high density of population far away from the old Greater Cairo urban area. Most of these new cities are now connected to the Greater Cairo area. This means we haven't reached any solution. The problem is increased, and no good vision from good planners, and at the same time, the political have an influence on these decisions, which is wrong, because we have to take the opinion of the planners and put any solution in the right way. But what we can do, sometimes we are challenged such or face such problems with such political in the decision, and we have to try as possible as can. Thank you.
Any other question? Yes, Professor Ayman.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for the discussion. I'm from the Department of Business Informatics and Operations Management. For me, the concept of smart cities is actually very intriguing, and I'm really interested to know from each of the panelists, the distinguished panelists, their opinion. What is the main criteria to distinguish Smart City 4.0 from other city, and how will we proceed in the future? What do they see the version 5.0 from their, because I see there are different expertise from different areas, architecture, technology, transportation, financial, etc. So from their opinion, what is the version 5.0 and what is the main criteria for version 4.0? Thank you.
For the new generation of the Smart Cities 4.0, that is the main object of our international conference today. And we want to reach tomorrow, inshallah, some recommendations to send it for the whole ministeriums here in Egypt about the recommendations we see in the new building of the new generation 4.0. And as I said yesterday in my opening speech, according to my opinion, that no maximum or optimum engineering solution can be optimal. We have ever or always to find some gaps in each optimum solution. For this reason, my opinion, after 2 years, we shall look for the new generation of Smart Cities 5.0, maybe some new aspects has been done through economical situation in the world or social situation in the population hierarchy or skeleton. We have to look about that, but we have to prepare ourselves for another conference, inshallah, within 2 years to see if it's possible to put new ideas and code system for a new Smart Cities 5.0. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ibrahim. I believe Dr. Nadine wants also to comment on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, too. It's very interesting. I have a quick thought. So I was at an event recently, and it was in Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas, they're spending a lot of money to make it a smart, place. And they had the mayor open the conference, and he started by saying, all you smart people, you want to do smart city this and smart city, all I want is to minimize the number of accidents on the road. All I want is to reduce the crime in my city. So I want, to be able to detect if there are any terrorist acts or congregations of people where they shouldn't be. And then he said even the simple use case where the streets and the alleys, just light them up when somebody's walking, but the rest of the time you don't need the light and you save the energy. Or they're solar. Or he's like, sometimes we always try to do the next best thing and we're going to do the science fiction stuff. But going back to the lady earlier who asked, did you talk to the users? I think some of our needs are actually basic. We want, and I appreciate, for example, and we're getting there, and maybe we're seeing it like bit by bit. Like my kids, for example, in the United States, now with the air quality, I think the wildfires from Canada, we had all these, we actually saw it even all the way to DC. And we would be having these warnings on our phone that say, your kids won't be going outside today when you send them to school. And you plan accordingly, right? So I think sometimes it's let's solve the little stuff, and then we will evolve into the 5.0, because I feel sometimes it's just like keep going vision after vision, but the reality is still the same for a lot of us.
Yes, actually, this is why our panel was started, that we are doing a very smart research and so, but we need to enhance the quality of our life, our simple life. Thank you, Dr. Nadine. Thank you, Professor Mustafa. Dr. Talal also want to add something?
With regards to this notion of smart cities, I think the question is who's smart? Is it the people inside the cities or is it the city itself? So I think nowadays we are trying to make, up to this generation, we have enough data to make people smarter by the capabilities that they have. But maybe in the next generation, you will have two aspects. One aspect is that you can have, they're already talking about intelligent cities, which means that cities will be able to make decisions. So it's not only you collect data, but the city itself or the infrastructure, which is not the real city, so the virtual city, it will start making decisions for the better of the community. And also you have a huge amount of data. And now you have with this AI and machine learning, you have the capability to process this data. So for example, maybe the traffic is not only about traffic, it's about what are the schools today? What's the temperature today? A lot of data that me as humans might not perceive important, but maybe the infrastructure or the smart city having this data will be able to come up with a correlation that we don't really see one-to-one. So this is what I believe the next generation of cities will have.
The digital twin city will say what it needs. So we have to implement it in real life.
Yeah.
And that's smart. It's really smart. Thank you. Is there any other questions, please? Okay, Yuli?
Fantastic panel discussion and lots of food for thought, as they say in England. And I'm sure Professor Nadine and the rest have heard of the Industrial Revolution number 5, which is coming. It's actually here, and it's going to be a lot more human-centric. And I was just making sure I've read it because I've been in an event recently and people were talking about it. So the next Smart Cities 5.0, I think, will be in line with Industry 5, which is, like I said, will send it to human beings. And apparently, they're going to put well-being above profit. And the idea is, because there's so much overproduction of everything, humans will have to work next to AI and robotics, but produce what we need and stop overproducing, because you know what's going, there's more clothes that anybody can ever wear and ends up in landfills, the same with food, same with everything. There's overproduction on everything. So Industry 5 is promising to minimize or whatever, balance this overspend and just produce as much as we need. So answer to the question, so it's coming up, look it up. I've only it's not very promising. I've only heard it recently in a conference. Yes, that will be ideal if we head that way and minimize the way us towards that. How much do we need? How much do we consume? Let's do that, and then try to convince the manufacturers to, I don't know, to slow down.
Thank you, Yuli, for this ad. Is there any questions? Okay, Dr. Mustafa.
Okay, it's not a question, rather it's just connecting what we are doing here. Yesterday we had Ulm City and Ulm University mentioning about their interests and their plans for Ulm. Tomorrow we'll be hearing about the Egyptian activities. We have from our partner, the Housing and Building Research Center, HBRC. We'll be hearing about the code for smart cities that are in plan. And there is another one in the pipeline for smart cities that exist for old cities or for cities that are already built. So I think I invite everybody not to miss also tomorrow's activities. It's very important. It's an official thing. We have standards for smart cities. That would be the one for the new built cities, and then another one in the pipeline for the existing cities as well. I thank the panel also, and again, it's not still closed yet if there's any more questions. Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's the context to raise the question, because if a city is neither heritage city nor smart city, what does it? How do we call it? Are the people there are doomed? We are more concerned with the future and the planning for something that does not exist. So it's good to start the planning for it, having the data, sharing the data, making everything perfect. That's fine. Also keeping our heritage, that's very fine as well. What about other cities that are not well equipped with what it takes to be a smart city? And also they don't have something to keep like heritage or whatever. I mean, do we call them old cities? Do we call them stupid cities, non-smart cities? What do we call them? And what will we do with them when Smart Cities 5.0 or whatever? I don't know why the next version should be 5. Maybe it's 4.5. We learn from our mistakes. I mean, the main question.
Next version. It's
yes.
the next version.
Anyway, I mean, whatever the name of the version is, it is a newer one. So it is based on newer discoveries from science or technology. As actually, we are inspired by the names from the mainly engineering, but like smart here means, to my understanding, the artificial intelligence improvement. And also the sustainability and the other things. They are inspired not from these civil engineering or whatever fields. They are inspired by the increase in technology. So again, the question is, what about those cities? I mean, they lie in the middle. Are they old? Will they be doomed? Will we change them? What do we do with them? And thank you.
Well, it's really a very good question. I want to add something. It's what the effect of those cities that will not, you have geospatial data and you are trying to do better infrastructure, better blah, 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 for carbon dioxide, but what about those cities that will not implement those stuff? So the people will turn to smart cities, but some countries are still behind, way behind. Will this affect all the effort that is done in the developed countries? So, سؤال صعب.
Yeah, I'll take a quick shot. I have no answer, but all I could think as you're talking about it is, and I don't know if it happens already or not, I'm not that tied to the smart cities, but I wonder if eventually there's an inventory, right? Like it's a worldwide, here are all the cities, and we have degrees of readiness or maturity or, whatever. And then they're all rated based on, certain criteria that's decided what is smart, small, medium, large, I don't know. And then this is how we can all have this visibility, I think, this transparency into who's doing what. And that's why I said the equity somewhere it needs to be. We don't always just solve the easy problems or the one where we're starting from scratch. So I have no solution or answer, but maybe a path forward is actually a rating of all cities with some internationally defined, agreed upon criteria.
I also just wanted to add that I think what we are now talking about smart cities 4.0 or 5.0 is maybe one definition of smart city. But I think there's also another definition that you are going to define what is actually smart. I mean, you can actually also try to define it as that a city structure, city fabric is offering resilience. Because resilience is also something which is smart. It doesn't have to do with digitalization at first hand, but it's maybe something else adding resilience to the city structure. And I think that's also something what I also wanted to add to the sample that you were taking on, that I was telling that we could reduce heat climate effect with trees. This is a solution which works maybe in Northern Europe, but it definitely doesn't work here in Egypt. So I think that's also something about smart cities and smart solutions. You should always consider where you are and what is a smart solution for your special location. And sometimes, to my mind at least, a smart solution doesn't always need to include digitalization or digital data, because sometimes smart solutions can also refer to ancient solutions because they have been even more smarter.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Duld.
I would like to add something. I think any improvement to create a better environment and sustainable is smart. So number one. Number two, I disagree a bit with the digitalization, depending what it means. I think there is a simple rule in life. What you don't measure, you will not manage. And every improvement you plan, you should measure, not by a gut feeling. You need some sensors, some measurement types to see whether the actions you do improve. And if you're honest there, and if it doesn't improve, then change the way you do it. So for me, smart city is whatever is better, but measure what you do. No matter where. No matter where.
So this will answer. Thank you so much. Professor Mahmoud has another question.
Just preaching the protocol, yeah? Okay. I would like to have a, maybe not an answer, but a comment. There's no clear definition of smart city. It was a finding of the last conference. It's not either smart or not smart. But unless we build something really from scratch and put all the capabilities together, and then we might like a fully smart city. But there are many examples all over the world, and not only in the global north, where cities have become smarter. And we just have to look at what are the problems we are having. Traffic congestion, people driving around for 1 hour to find a parking lot, lots of water in water distribution systems, leakage in sewage systems. So there are many aspects where cities can be improved for the benefit of those people living in those cities with smart measures, using all these technologies which we have heard about and maybe further ones. So the question is not, do we build everything new and forget about the old one? There's a lot to be improved in the old ones that can make life safer, healthier, people happier.
I need to make a comment also to back up Jan as an architect. You said everything should be measured, and I strongly disagree. We can measure a lot of things, but half of our job as architects is the quality that we're providing you cannot measure, thank God. And maybe you can put it into a system of making marks or questions, but we're talking a lot about quality spaces that are tackling emotions. I try to not talk about this kind of thing in my studio because I want to have the students, also my clients, not talk about emotions, but it's experiences. And you cannot measure that. You can try to and put it into a possible grading system or something like that, but for the moment it's not yet possible.
I also just wanted to add to this. I didn't mean that like you have to kick out digitalization and that this isn't working, but I was just trying to emphasize that sometimes things that have been done in the past, like in ancient times, had a meaning and that it was quite smart as well. Because, for example, living in a climate like this, the density of Cairo, the old Cairo has a meaning because there's shadows, there's narrow paths, and so I think sometimes, and we as architects, we're then studying structures. We are studying and deriving from these structures sometimes new solutions, but I think I just wanted to emphasize that we should not only believe in technology only, but I think we should also try to compare what is our heritage and why people have been doing something and combine it cleverly in a way with our technology and our ability that we have now. That's the only thing I wanted to express.
Thank you so much. I believe we came to an end, so thank you all for this very interesting discussion.